Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is a public hearing for ordinance, this is the Haverford Township Board of Commissioners on December 9th, 2024. Pursuant to properly advertised notices, we are conducting a public hearing as required by state law when we consider making changes to our zoning ordinance. This is the public hearing on ordinance number P17, 2024. With all our public hearings and meetings, I suspect that we should start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we will rise, and I will ask the Township Manager to begin the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Township Manager Berman. Before us today is the Ordinance of Haverford Township, Delaware County. We are amending Chapter 182 zoning, Section 182/106B. In this ordinance, we will be providing new definitions relating to buildings, structures, and lots. We will also be amending Section 182/711 relating to accessory buildings and accessory structure regulations. And finally, we will be amending Section 182-802, relating to nonconforming uses, buildings, and structures. Mr. Walco, our township solicitor, would you begin the meeting with all the proper introductions and magic words and abracadabras that we need?
Thank you, President Holmes. To begin this hearing, I'm going to mark 6 exhibits. First is Board Exhibit 1, which is the ordinance itself that is subject to this hearing, a zoning text change. Board Exhibit 2 is the legal notice of tonight's hearing. Board Exhibit 3 is the proof of publication of that legal notice notifying the public of tonight's hearing, which was published in the Delco Times on November 25th and December 2nd, 2024. Board Exhibit 4 is the proof of submission on October 25th, 2024, and then a subsequent review of the proposed ordinance by the Delaware County Planning Commission. Board Exhibit 5 is the proof of submission on November 7th, 2024 of the final version of this ordinance to the Haverford Planning Commission, and Board Exhibit 6 will be proof of subsequent reviews by the Haverford Planning Commission at their August, September, and October Planning Commission meetings, which eventually led to that final November submission. Those are the exhibits that we have at this time. I believe at this time it would be proper for the township planner to provide the board and the public with a brief overview of what the ordinance amendment is proposing to be done and any history she feels is relevant for the board's review.
Thank you, Mr. Walco. Mr. Lozny, if you would step forward, and I'm sure that our court reporter will want you to identify yourself for the record. And does she need to go under oath? Well, I don't.
Yeah. I do. Okay.
Mr. Lozing, if you would, as the township solicitor indicated, if you could give us a brief overview of the changes to the ordinances.
Sure. The impetus behind the changes to the ordinance were to clarify our existing regulations concerning nonconforming uses or buildings. We did that by separating the provisions for nonconforming uses from nonconforming buildings, and then adding nonconforming structures language and nonconforming lots under separate provisions to each address whatever the nonconformity is per that specifically.
Will that make the township's job easier?
Yes.
Will it raise any significant roadblocks to any of our constituents who are, seeking to get guidance on or approval for accessory buildings, accessory structures, or nonconforming uses, buildings or structures?
I don't believe it will make roadblocks, but it will make the interpretation of the ordinance much easier for administering the code.
Excellent. Any of my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Lozan? Mr. Solicitor, were any questions raised to your attention that need to be addressed or raised at this hearing?
Just one clarity that often the public is confused about. Director Gelosian, we'd agree with me that as a result of this ordinance, nobody in the public would have to take any action. Nobody would have to remove anything. So if there was a nonconformity that's existing now, they wouldn't actually have to remove that nonconformity. It'd be only if there was some sort of a destruction or a voluntary demolition of that conformity.
All existing nonconforming uses, structures, lots, any nonconformity will remain as it is unless it is removed either voluntarily or by destruction of a natural hazard or fire or something of that sort.
Thank you. That was the only clarity I thought was important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Does anybody else have anything else? Thank you, Director Gelosian. Unless you have nothing further, you are excused.
Okay.
Thank you. Does any member of the public have anything they would like to share, any testimony they would like to give at this public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public comment session of our public. Oh, yes, please. Please come forward, identify yourself, and if you would, allow Madam Court Reporter to administer an oath. Identify yourself first.
Garrett Barker. Barker, B-A-R-K-E-R. Yes.
Mr. Barker.
My name is Garrett Barker. I'm a current Ardmore resident, only a block and a half from Haverford Township. And as far as I understand, the ordinance will affect the ability of residents to construct an accessory dwelling for residence purposes. And I just wanted to record my thoughts that growth is a challenging natural force to be dealt with, much like rain or snow. And I would say that there are ways you can deal with it. If you don't deal with it, you can lead to haphazard development planning, which leads to adverse effects, or you can totally clamp down on it. And that might seem necessary for many purposes and lead to short-term benefits for certain people. But as far as accessory dwellings go as a means for assisting in smart growth, accepting the fact that growth is a force to be reasoned with and may be inevitable depending on the demand for the area, which can increase housing costs. And as a perspective, Havertown homeowner, one day I currently rent in Ardmore, but I spent many years and days here with my great aunt who lived on Hearst Terrace, walking up to the dollar store that I think used to be there on Eagle Road, and funerals and other services at St. Denis. I do wish to move to this area one day and hope to find a house that fits within my budget. So as far as accessory dwellings can affect the affordability of the area, I would be in support of them.
Thank you, Mr. Barker.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm
Please
Grace
identify-
Rogers.
Oh,
Sorry.
Grace, okay, thank you.
And I live at Grace Rogers. R-O-G-E-R-S. I live in Havertown. I've lived here for about a year and near Merwood Park. And I was a little concerned that the ordinance as it's laid out is very restrictive on not permitting residential uses for accessory dwelling units. My parents are hopefully going to move to the area pretty soon, and being able to build an ADU on our property to allow them to live there for part of the time would be really helpful as we start to think about starting a family. And I think because, I love how dense our neighborhood is. I live in an R5 district. It's really walkable. We know our neighbors. It's very friendly. And having that density, honestly, I think contributes a lot to the sense of place and the culture and the community in a way that I wouldn't get if we had like an acre lot or more. And so I think there's a lot of ways that either, I could also envision someone who's got a college aged child or someone who's recently graduated who maybe is trying to figure out what they're going to do post-graduation. It would be nice to go home, but don't necessarily want to be under their parents' roof. Having that restriction not allowing any habitable use for an accessory dwelling structure, I think is just too limiting. And, you know, to Garrett's point, for those who are looking to come into the neighborhood, it's a really great neighborhood and a really great community. There's other restrictions that could be put to, you know, make sure that those, I think the township already has a restriction on Airbnbs, so that could be continued. But I just don't see the need to restrict this to not allow habitation in a structure.
Thank you. Yes. Hi,
Hi, Dave.
Mr. Schwartz. Nice to see you. Nice to see you again. Well, this is a public hearing. This is different from our comment section in just a regular meeting.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to echo what the other two individuals had said in support of use as well. So, in general, they do impact the affordability. Years being level off a little bit now. PDUs are a great way. Ordinance are not supposed to be considered.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Are there any other members of the public who would like to testify at this public hearing? Seeing none, I will now close the public testimony session of the hearing. Is there anything any of my colleagues would like to add to this public hearing, or we'll just postpone any discussion to our evaluation at our meeting later tonight?
So I would like to hear from Jamie a little bit more about whether this is actually going to limit accessory dwelling units. Because I wasn't my understanding it really was going to.
Currently, our code does not permit accessory dwelling units, and this amendment does not address them. We did make minor changes to a section that speaks to the second story being uninhabitable for an accessory structure, which is consistent with what the language was prior to our amendment. We just tightened up we clarified that section a little bit more to make sure that we didn't make any change there, but we in no way permit accessory dwelling units right now. And this amendment was not to address that in any way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from my?
Just briefly, from a administrative point of view, I'm not sure, just because this is being recorded by a court reporter, were we supposed to do a roll call?
I don't think that'd be necessary for the meeting. I think it'd be clear from the transcript who's in attendance.
Perfect.
Well, and I can state that the entire board is here and a quorum exists for purposes of this public hearing, which I believe is the requirement. But thanks, Commissioner Gondik. Excellent point. Is there anything else anybody would like to add? Hearing nothing, Mr. Walco, does the township completed its presentation at this public hearing?
So at this time, once the hearing is closed, this ordinance will be in a position where it could be voted upon by this board. I believe, is it the first reading tonight, or is it for its first reading tonight?
Okay, well, Hearing nothing to the contrary, I close this public hearing, and we will reconvene in 28 minutes for a regular meeting. Thank you all for being here, and see you soon.